My name's Grace Gilker. I'm the Communities Program Manager with Hill Country Alliance. And our esteemed moderator will introduce our panelists, but as everyone's making their way this direction, I'll introduce her. So Mayor Pro Tem Emily Kirchner is Mayor Pro Tem in the city of Fredericksburg. She's also a founding board member of the Fredericksburg Park Foundation, and she was in the inaugural class 3 years ago now of the Hill Country Leadership Institute, which y'all will hear about in just a second. And with that, I'll turn it over to y'all.
Good morning, everyone. Is this on?
Not yet.
Hello? Okay. Talk loudly and down. Can y'all hear me? Yes. Okay. Good morning. My name's Emily, and I'm excited to have this esteemed panel with me. I'll give y'all the chance to introduce yourselves. Go ahead, Judge Rubio.
So my name is Beierle Rubio, and I'm the current county judge for Rubio County.
I'm Damon Beierle, Burnet County Commissioner for Precinct 2.
Drew Paxton with the City of Kerrville, Director of Development Services.
All right. So across the Hill Country, we're facing plenty of challenges, but we also have plenty of opportunities to lead with creativity and resilience. So you'll get to hear some of our projects around the counties and learn from each other, and also have a chance to share the good that you're seeing in your communities. So, quick plug before we get started on the Hill Country Leadership Institute. Who here has heard of the Institute? Awesome. Okay, this is a brainchild of many of the people here in this room, but it's a gathering of judges, commissioners, city councilmen, groundwater conservation district general managers, and board members and senior staff meeting over the course of a year and learning about all things Hill Country management related. We were at the Capitol advocating for our region. We were in a riverbed learning about riparian restoration, everywhere in between. So Bella and Drew and I were in the first class. They're finishing up the third class. If you have been involved in that institute, would you mind standing to be recognized? Come on, y'all. Woo! All right, so let's get a quick sense of who's in the room. If you don't mind raising your hand if you work in water. Right. What about land and development? Nonprofits and philanthropy? Consultants and developers? Elected office and local government? And who loves the Hill Country? Okay, good. This is the collective wisdom we get to learn from throughout the day. Let's start with water, though. Water is the key issue for many of us across the Hill Country, and along the I-35 corridor especially, we have water scarcity tied with rapid unmanaged development. The situation is slightly different, though, in Beierle County, and if you could talk about that, Judge Rubio, a moment when water scarcity kind of came to the forefront and what y'all did.
So for Beierle County, of course, I am a native pioneer family from Beierle County. My family moved there in the 1890s. And so growing up, I watched the transition of a basically ranching industry-based, hunting industry-based county develop into a tourist-based, developer attraction-based county. And so the roles in Beierle County for county government evolved greatly. And so as time went on, ranches sold because either they had no children to pass the ranches on to, or the children had moved to make a better living. Ranching became harder. Federal government incentives went away. And so they became, family pioneer ranches became very attractive to developers in Beierle County. And so there was quite a bit of development done for 2 decades in the 70s and the 80s. and with little to no regulations or rules. And then in the 90s, the commissioners got a little more proactive. I used to be the county clerk and sitting in all those meetings and taking minutes, and you know, you just don't ever think water's ever going to be minimal. And subdivisions were developed thinking supply is endless, the Frio is endless, the Nueces River is endless. It's always been there. Even droughts come and go, and it's always been there. And then in the 2000s, I must give a lot of credit to my predecessor and mentor, Judge Gary Merritt, who's in the room today. He became very proactive in beginning to realize that water is limited and stretched in Riau County. And when the torch was passed on to me, along with some new commissioners, we felt the need to enhance our subdivision rules and regulations, and we contracted with outside attorney and outside engineer, and we started tightening the rules. And growth is inevitable. It is. But for me as a county judge, I think about, okay, growth is here, it's coming. So put on your full armor and remember, you have got to be prepared and protect and preserve. And so that's what we tried to do in Riau County. We, in following the property code and doing things, of course, according to the law, we changed the local law of the land by tightening our subdivision rules the best we could. We're grateful, even though we all haven't had a humongous amount of victories in the Texas legislature, they did tighten with the hydrology study that now has to be with every development. You know, we still have a long ways to go, and I would love to hear any input. Hill Country Alliance, that honestly, before I became part of the leadership, the first cohort, I knew nothing about Hill Country Alliance or what it did. And so when I was invited to become a part of their leadership, I thought, well, okay, what am I getting myself into? I don't even know what I could bring to the table, but, well, it wasn't anything I could bring. It's what Hill Country Alliance gave me to take back to the 3,000 residents of Riau County and to educate them and to protect the future and be a good steward of water and land.
Awesome. What were some unlikely allies that you had?
Well, you know, you're always going to get some pushback from some developers because they want to do things minimal. And then you have some developers that really share the same vision, and we're thankful for those developers. I ran into a homegrown Lakey boy here, and I'm thankful for Chisholm Banks, J.B. Chisholm's construction that is aware of water. You know, I always tell people the Frio River and the Nueces River, because now we're a tourist-based industry, is liquid gold to us in Riau County. And so we just want a good, healthy partnership with developers.
That's a great example. Commissioner Beierle, let's talk Burnet County. Y'all have been deep into the groundwater discussions. Can you walk us through the story of the difference between availability and sustainability and what impact that had on y'all?
Sure. In 2019, I'll start out by saying our story is very similar, and I'm sure a lot of counties are. In the 90s, they started to kind of wake up and see we needed some regs, and so those regs got put into place in the 2000s. And then in 2019 was my first year on the court, and I believe it was in March we passed and added water availability studies to our regs. Now that's a state law that all counties have to do that. But one thing that working with our water district, Mitchell's here today, he's part of the Institute, I jumped right in starting to work with them, and we had a recent development with, and I'm the rural part of the county, so I'm the same way where my ranches are getting cut up into, people buy it and they think it's cheap land, and they think they can take 1,000 acres, and this developer actually thought he could do a couple thousand lots because he was a city type developer. He didn't have any idea, so he went and did his mathematics on that, and then found out in a reg for the water district that there was 2 acre minimum, so he did his he's like, oh, now it's 2 acres. Well, then we found out about the water availability study. And so they conducted those studies, and of course, those hydrologists are on the side of the developer, in my opinion. And so when a developer tells them how many lots they need, they can tend to, it's all science and data driven. So Mitchell at the Water District started looking at those for us, and then he got another firm and Tara to look at those so we can get a third eye on it, not just because I'm obviously not an expert. And so with Mitchell and Tara looked at that, and we found some areas where we need to get the tracks bigger. So that brings in the word sustainability, because you put your blinders on for availability. Will this be able to generate water for 30 years, period? Well, I think we've all learned, talking about from the 90s to the 2000s to now, 30 years isn't very long. And so I hope that we can start to look at more sustainability when it comes to the data and the amount of water in the ground. When you're pulling from, we're over the Trinity for the most part in my precinct. The Water District is now looking at its first ever management zone in the county, and that's all in my area. And this development kind of triggered that. They're taking a lot of that data and did a region or a county precinct-wide water study based on that data, and it's trying to help us look more at a sustainable option instead of just what's available in this moment.
That's awesome. Can you talk a bit about the water pressures that y'all are getting from the aggregate industry's presence?
So I don't have a lot of the aggregate in my precinct. We're more rural, like I said, but the other areas that have that, it's the amount of water used, and the Water District does a real good job of monitoring that. They have the permitted wells, so they have the way to do that. I do know some of our aggregates are recycling the water, reusing it, and trying to use as little as possible, but it is definitely having a large impact, and especially new aggregates coming in that don't have the water supplies, and they're strictly groundwater. So those are going to start to tap in even more. When you get on that side of 281, for those familiar with Burnet County, where the aggregates are, that aquifer is a little bit different than the Trinity. It's still there. So that's definitely going to have an impact on us, and we have to work with the Water District to make sure that we support them and their rules, and that they support us, so that we can all work together to sustain water.
Collaboration is important for sure.
Correct.
Before we go over to Drew, I wanted to jump in. So the city of Fredericksburg similarly has some growth pressures. The modeled available groundwater for Gillespie County is 84% allocated for the Ellenberger-San Saba aquifer that we pull from. And the 2022 state water plan has municipal demand increasing 28% over the next 50 years. So with that and what we've learned from the Hill Country Alliance, we jumped out and did a one water resolution. It's non-binding, but Marisa and Cliff helped us with the language to help direct our city staff to talk about cost and benefits of one water. Instead of just looking at wastewater or groundwater, we're looking at drinking water, wastewater, gray water, stormwater, and how we're managing that all together. And so it was a good win for us in Fredericksburg, but stepping it up a bit, what Kerrville did with an ordinance. Drew, if you could talk about the work you did with Kerrville City Council and the stakeholders to pass your tree preservation ordinance. Y'all did that prior to the July floods, right?
Right.
So now y'all are working on riparian restoration, debris management. Tell us what's up there.
So with a lot of our communities, obviously more regulation gets a lot of pushback through the particularly development community, much less their citizens. So the community was very strong on protecting trees. When we went to propose regulations, got a lot of pushback. So we actually started with a set of tree preservation guidelines, not binding, but at least to help educate the community. With that adoption, within a year and a half, we were able to adopt an ordinance that is binding for new developments. That kind of segueing into the flood, that really helped educate the community even further the importance of the trees along the river and throughout the hill country. As we're working through recovery on the flood, the community really supported trying to save as many trees as possible after the flood. So we worked with the Texas Forest Service to go out and actually map out all of the trees along the riverbank that are still viable. Most of the debris management companies are used to just clear cutting everything. We marked or I say we, Texas Forest Service marked over 2,000 trees just on the city park property alone that were viable trees, even though they had damage, to actually work around that with the debris clearing. A lot of the private property owners are able to opt in or out of the debris management. So we've seen quite a few property owners turn that away and not have the state come in and do a lot of the debris clearing. They're doing their own, so they can manage it independently.
That's great. Can you talk about y'all's long-term recovery group?
After the flood, we developed a long-term recovery group. It's, I think, 16 different subcommittees ranging from economics, market, housing, and there's one specific to the river restoration. So that group is working with Hill Country Alliance, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and several other groups to try to figure out the best methods to help the riparian area restore back to more of a native landscape.
That's very cool. Well, before we open it up for questions, I'm curious if any of y'all have had interaction with other local governments, whether it's cities in your county or other counties. Have there been any wins that y'all have had, best practices in that way?
So for Rial County, as we were having subdivision rule and regulation workshops, because we did want input from our local realtors and brokers and just taxpayers in general. And so we conducted about three, the Commissioners Court conducted 3 subdivision rule and regulation workshops. And we invited the county judges from the contiguous counties because we felt like it was important. At one time, when Rial County was first created in 1913, it was created out of a portion of Bandera, Kerr, and Edwards. And so I was in constant communication with those judges, just trying to kind of be on the same page and try to work with developers. And so I think, things speak in numbers. And so at least if we could align those 3 counties, and Uvalde was also on board, Uvalde County, they're working through theirs as well. I think if we can all, for the most part, agree. I know there's not a template that fits every county, of course, but if the basically rural counties, which Edwards and Rial, are similar, if we can work together and have similar rules, then I believe it helps definitely in healthy growth and development.
Mine would be the Hill Country Alliance is probably what helped me communicate with other counties. I know going into this session, the 10-acre tract exemption from 23 really affected us. We haven't, in my precinct, haven't platted a subdivision since then because to skirt the road requirements and the water availability studies, they do the 10-acre tract exemption. So that's been a struggle for us, and then trying to combat that. So through that process, trying to get some legislation tweaked a little bit to try to help us at least have, whether it's water or some of these roads getting built right, because that's a whole other issue, because these roads aren't built to any kind of standard, then in 10 years, they're calling us to fix their roads. And so there's a lot of safety involved in that. But when it came to coming together, I know Commissioner Shell from Hays County is going to come to our county and talk to us about some of our subdivision regulations and things Hays County did. So I think the collaborative talking amongst counties is important. What's working, what's not working. Anytime I talk about this in other places, I've had counties come up and tell me, from one extreme to the other, how they're trying to combat it. And we're trying to gather all that data together. And I did go to the legislature, and I will say a plug for the Alliance. It takes a group, and it takes us all in here kind of singing the same message to our legislators, because I got up there and I was at the in front of Betancourt and that committee, and they really listened on the water stuff when it came to that in the regs. So that was good. When it came to the road regs, they kind of lost interest, and then the developer next to me said that we make them build roads 10 times greater than our county roads. That really got their attention and made us look super evil. And so
How dare you?
I mean, I got the for shame look, and I was like, I saw some developer hands go up, but this guy just exaggerated beyond all measure. I didn't even know what to say, but they cut me off, so I went home. And no, I'm going back. Yeah, I'm going to keep going back. I'm going to keep trying, and it's going to be through groups of, trying to do that. So, yes, sir. Sorry.
Again, the Hill Country Alliance really helped make connections for other cities that had adopted a tree preservation ordinance. So we reached out to a few of those cities just to kind of get an idea of, through implementation, what problems did they see, so that we could try to get ahead of that before we adopted the ordinance, figure out how we're going to implement it, and anticipate some of those problems.
Great. Well, love to open it up. If anyone has a win or a lesson learned that you'd like to share from your community, would love to hear about it. And then you can also ask questions of these experts. Anyone?
I got a question. Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Okay. So I was involved in a lot of advocacy in Burnet many years ago, and the thing that really occurred to me early on was that the people who show up are the ones who get represented. And what I noticed is that the developers were always in the office because they had an incentive to be in the offices, to make the relationships with the leadership, and to therefore get their will met. Whereas I felt like the citizens weren't really aligned with the developers, honestly, and yet they didn't feel as represented. That was very obvious at that time. That dynamic has definitely shifted both in Burnet and Kendall County, but I think it still begs the question. It's just like what you experienced up at the Capitol, that a lot of times some of these interests have the resources and also the reason to be in the room, to spend the money on the lobbying efforts or ingratiating themselves to leadership. So how can we better make sure that the community as a whole is being represented in the decisions that are made, the rules that are made, and not a small cohort of vested interest?
My opinion on that is as public officials and leaders, we need to remind our citizens and give them the tools that they can reach out as well, plus what we're magnifying in the voices of what our counties need. A lot of these regulations stem from big counties, and they do broad brush fixes, and it affects rural counties in a very bad way. Kendall, Burnet, all these counties, very similar song when it comes to the regulations. Those regulations were made to fight chances are, a big county that was taking advantage, right? And so we have to pay the price for it and then change our regs. But to your point, I try to tell my constituents, I give them email addresses for our state reps. They want to hear from people. They need to hear from people. And, if they only hear from us a few times in a committee, then it doesn't really resonate. So I think more constant, all the time type communication, and not just during that legislative window where they're really focused on maybe the things that their pet projects are, and not, if it's not on the radar there, you got to get it on there before.
Totally
agree.
Not
so much at the state level, but the local level. City of Kerrville invested a lot of time and effort into the public engagement through our comprehensive plan. And our subsequent city councils have actually looked at that plan to kind of promote their priorities for the year and continue to get community engagement before making some of these new regulations and adopting new ordinances.
Yeah. Is Mayor Thurman here by chance, Horseshoe Bay? She has done a great job in terms of advocacy, and she has a listserv, and anytime session was in, for however long this year, and anytime there was an issue that was affecting Horseshoe Bay, she would send the email out, and it would be a form letter and email addresses of who to talk to at the Capitol. And you've got to make it easy for the people to understand what the issue is, try to distill it down, and then give them the talking points to go. It helps. Right here.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me? Good. Yes. Good morning. Carolyn Vogel here. We've been walking around and looking at this issue for many decades now, which is conservation development. And I think it's time or past time to put aside that the answer to protecting property and such is just to make the lots bigger, when what we have in front of us is an opportunity for cluster development, for developing those designs where you put people close so they're neighbors, and save all the land around them instead of the 10 and 20 and 30 acre things that, for instance, I know the aerial map of Real County and how chopped up it is. And I know the Hill Country Alliance is going to be pushing much more education about conservation development. And the answer isn't to break up the lands into, instead of 1 acre, 10 acre. That's going, what's the word I'm looking for? It's going backwards instead of forwards. So I'm really an advocate for, let's look at cluster development. Let's talk to the development community about the pluses of that. It is time.
Yes.
Well, I think she's had her hand.
Hi. Can you hear me? I am just really interested in the tree ordinance and how that actually, is it just for the subdivision sectioning, or is it something that in a county that actually can help along a riverbed and areas that, so like I live near the San Saba River, which was demolished pretty hard in that last July storm. So, we have a riparian section that's been really damaged by that. So I'm just curious, would that help all of us in our county? And how would that, was that something, or is it strictly for subdividing and things of that sort? Because we're pretty small with numbers and large amounts of land.
The city of Kerrville, obviously just inside the city limits, really focused on all the new development. Council and the community were hesitant to make that regulation retroactive to existing properties, existing homeowners not being able to trim or take down a tree. So focusing strictly on new development doesn't impact the river as much because there's not a lot of development directly on the river, at least currently. So yes and no. It depends on how the regulations are written. Like I said, Kerrville primarily focused on the new development for the areas that have large agriculture and heavy tree stands that are untouched, trying to protect those.
When you were with the other, work with the other people that have tree alliances, were all of them to do with subdivisions mostly, or was it, did any of them have to do with landowners? When you kept reaching out to the other counties that have that ordinance?
There are a few cities that are citywide, not just new development. Since council made it pretty clear that their focus was new development, we were looking more towards those that are directed that direction.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. Commissioner, you mentioned sort of in passing that there was maybe going to be, or that you were looking at the possibility of creating a management zone that would be largely in your precinct. Could you tell us a little bit more what a management zone is?
I'll try. Mitchell's in the room, so he's probably going to send me an email later on to correct me, but or I might even pass the mic to him if I get way off. But basically, this development really triggered this big development. And I'll go back to one point there is that during the testing phases, a lot of neighboring wells were already being affected while they were only doing tests. And so that got our attention, and it also made us look at the law, and some of that can't even be considered, but because they weren't deep enough, or they could go deeper. So they had options now. Those are very expensive. And some of these ranches have been in these families a long time. But to your point, when they started to take all the data from other water studies and see that area of the Trinity was very vulnerable, didn't have a lot of production until you got really deep. And so they did that, and they're starting to see that creating over that part of the Trinity a larger area of needing to be spacing, well spacing, gallons per minute, pump size, to where they have their regular rules for the county, but then this zone will have more specific geared towards the data that they've collected. I don't know where Mitchell went, but if I can get a thumbs up, maybe? Okay.
There you go. Good job. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Virginia. Can y'all hear me?
No.
Try again?
There you go.
Okay. Virginia Parker with the San Marcos River Foundation. I wanted to ask y'all, we are getting hammered in San Marcos with SB 2038, and considering the cities do have more ability to have more regulation on development, do you see an opportunity for cities and counties to band together to put more pressure on the legislators to reverse that decision, because it is not just affecting the Hill Country. I think it's affecting the whole state, and I've been surprised that there hasn't been more outcry from especially the counties, because y'all are getting hammered because the cities aren't able to control what's going on. So do you see that as an opportunity?
I think so.
Yeah, let's talk. What is 2038?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
was going to
the
ask.
So
Tell me.
annexation?
SB 2038 allows landowners in the ETJ of a municipality to get out of the ETJ. Therefore, they're no longer subject to municipal city code. And that puts more strain on the counties where, you know, Hayes County's done a great job making a lot of suggestions and having best practices, but ultimately the developers are not subject to those because it's all voluntary.
I know for Burnet County, our city's ordinance, or for Burnet, City of Burnet, their ordinances don't extend into the ETJ, so they haven't seen as much of an impact. So I know how, I'd have to ask the city manager if they're heading in a direction of, you know, with the, now there's no, there's only voluntary annexation, so it hadn't affected us as much in Burnet, but that's because I think the way it's set up that they're not, those codes aren't in the ETJ.
Unfortunately for Riau County, we have two small incorporated cities, which Lakey is the county seat. But if anybody's here from Riau County, they can attest to this statement I'm about to make. We are probably have more rules than our municipalities and our cities. So if there's a little piece of land in the city, the developers flock to the city because the cities, unfortunately.
In Gillespie County, the extraterritorial jurisdiction is kind of no man's land, but we have an agreement. The city and the county has an agreement, so we're able to talk with each other whenever developers looking at going in there. But after the bill was passed, we had a lot of knee-jerk people that just removed themselves because they don't like the city and they don't like taxes, they don't like the ability that maybe one day they could be annexed. So it is a good example of ways we can work with the counties, but as y'all know, county government is set up so vastly different than cities. And I think that worked whenever we had massive landowners that had thousands and thousands of acres in the county, but it's not the way it is anymore. So I would love to see that addressed. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Mark Friesenhahn. I'm a pecan farmer in Comal County. I've studied the water situation pretty heavily as part of our several advocacy groups. And what's happening, we're moving all of our water in the state plan to municipal need, industrial and commercial and home building. My question to you deals with, in your various interactions in planning and approving subdivisions, how do you handle the developer's commitment to available water? We see no cumulative assessment requirements at the state level. So the way we understand it, the commercial industrial folks don't even have to sign up for the water they're going to use. They just take it. The residential developers have to claim the water, but A and the B developer can claim the same water. There's no cumulative assessment. How do you deal with that? I mean, unless we start getting these major water users to commit for the water they're going to need, we're not going to know we're in trouble till way after the fact. And that's my issue, cumulative assessment, and we've been hammering that pretty hard with Senator Perry. I'd like y'all's comments from your own experiences, please.
We haven't been faced with any commercial or industry or anything like that. You know, we're just, the county seat just got a sewer system in recently, so.
I think for Burnet, it's, I said it earlier, working together with the water district, because we do have massive industrial users of the quarries and some other industries. So staying in tune with your water district's rules and seeing where you can support them and then where they can support you, just like Burnet County, I'll say we do a really good job of that, I feel like. And so, because just like them looking at a management zone for our it's more residential. There is some commercial in there, but helping each other out in that regard, and then that way you can look at more of a cumulative, what we have and how it's best protected. I think those, being a good partnership is important.
The city of Kerrville has pretty diverse water resources between our surface water from the river, groundwater from wells, and our aqua storage and recovery wells. So we try to make sure that obviously we are good stewards of the water, because if we start taking a lot of water out of the ground versus the river, it's going to have impacts on the county wells. We recently are working on an ordinance to mirror the county as far as a water availability for new developments. So anytime property is annexed in, trying to mirror our water use to the groundwater district to make sure we're not allocating more usage than what the groundwater district would, and trying to find that balance between those two.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start doing that. In my opinion, private property rights caps are gonna have to change. Edwards Aquifer Authority was one of the early examples.
I'm sorry, Mark, but I think without the mic, that's going to be a tricky one. But
I have a lot to say, but I'll shut up.
we'll go back to it. But I don't see Daniel with another question. Okay, you have one more, and then I have one, and I think then we'll have to wrap.
Thank you. I think I heard you asking for wins, and I would love to bring something up. This county authority issue has been going on for so long. I really appreciate HCA for carrying it and all of you for working on it. There was a situation in Travis County that I think is a win that's a little outside of county authority, because we have to get creative given the fact that we have so few tools. And Commissioner Howard is here, and I know that there's a representative from Mirasol here, but there was a development in western Travis County causing a lot of anxiety for people because of the amount of groundwater they were going to be using near Hamilton Pool. And Hill Country Alliance, Hill Country Conservancy, and others, we had many conversations with the district, with the county, with the developers. After about 2 years of dialogue, a really creative solution came up with our county and the developer working together. They actually relinquished their right to withdraw groundwater from this development in exchange for a limited use, a limited purpose surface water line. The situation's not perfect, but I think it's an example of how these conversations and these relationships and these dialogues over time can bring a creative solution. And I think it's the first time something like this has happened where actually this county now holds these groundwater rights. Ann Howard can explain it more, and Matt Welch, who I don't know where they are, but maybe they could raise their hands. So a big win.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great, last one?
Well, I maybe jumping off of that, and you'll already talked a little bit about the collaborations that have been helpful, working with other governments. And I know, Judge Rubio, you mentioned, some local construction groups that have been good to work with and sort of share this vision. But I know that y'all have a variety of collaborations in place. I'm a big fan of the sort of driveway meetings that y'all are doing in the city of Fredericksburg. So whether it's something more at a citizen level, or if it is, maybe some unexpected collaborations with, a sustainability-minded developer, I want to give us a chance to go into our networking break on a positive note. So if there's anything that springs to mind there.
Yeah. I can talk on the neighborhood town halls. That's something our city has done where we've divided up the city of Fredericksburg into 27 different district neighborhoods. And then we would go and probably twice a month would have people host, and we would have all senior staff from the city council come and just have kind of an open mic where people can talk and not have an agenda that we have to go off of, and people can ask questions about the dog catcher, the potholes, whatever the issues might be, in a way that's not threatening, because you're just sitting in lawn chairs with your friends. And that has been a very positive thing that has helped us in terms of people thought, not being transparent or whatever, but then you can come together and ask any questions and get to know your neighbors too, because we need more of those gatherings. It's great, yeah.
I agree. The Water District had several one major meeting with local folks in the proposed management area, and they flooded to that. And so then, since then, it's caused them to pay more attention, whether it be via email or social media, and see what's going on and finding out more about it. So it engages the community in the smaller meetings like that. I have one major city, or say major, it's Burnet, but in Burnet County, it's pretty major. And then I have a lot of communities. So those community groups are talking more, and talking to them specifically about their needs is showing a lot of move forward and communication and getting participation.
And I'm really grateful that we do have some key people in Riel County that are willing to help us educate. I know Amanda Griffin, I'm thankful for her and her husband that do a lot over in the Nueces Canyon part of Riel County, and several on the Frio Canyon. Commissioner Gray is very instrumental in her precinct. And so, you know, we're just a small population, and in Riel County, nothing really becomes a magnet to heat until, you know, something big happens. And I don't want to get switched over to this, but like the transmission line that's projected to come through several counties. And so that's a hot topic right now. And so I have a very open door policy because I only have 3,000 residents, and I think 1,000 of them have my cell phone number. So.
Please join me in giving a round of applause.